Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What is up, PGF Nation? We're back. We're dropping our top 5 edge rushers in this NFL draft. And once again, I already know some of you guys are going to disagree with this list. There's a name that everyone has at the top of their rankings or near the top of their rankings that barely cracked my top 5. There's a guy that I'm way higher on than most other draft analysts. And there's a guy that's number 1 on my list that didn't even make Alex's top 5. So we're going to debate it, guys. We got a lot of different opinions here. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. Alex, how are we feeling about this edge class?
I don't know, but listening to you, it sounds like it's going to be a very interesting night.
I think so too. Look, we just did the wide receiver rankings recently. If you guys haven't checked it out, go back and look at that episode. But wide receivers, we had a lot of consensus, a little different top 5. We had guys ranked in a few different spots. We had a lot of the same names. This one is definitely different. Alex, I'm going to start here with my number 1 player on the board and a guy that I just teased there in the intro that didn't crack your top 5, Arvell Reese for Ohio State. Look, I got to hear first, before I go on and tell you about why I like this guy, I want to hear why you don't have Arvell Reese on your top 5.
What has he done?
As far as production and
yeah, he has 1 year. One. That's it. He doesn't have anything else. He has 1 year of production. And I don't know what you are. He has a half a sack his second year. He has 6.5 this year. He has 3.5 tackles for loss his second year. He has 10 tackles for loss. So it looks like he was building a resume to become a guy, but he left a year too early. So I don't know what you are compared to everybody else who has a resume. His resume is basically 1 year. Now, we could talk about how skillful he looks. We could talk about all of that, but we could talk about that with everybody. But what have you put on tape in games? You have 1 year of production where everybody else has multiple years of production. So that was my number 1 reason for taking him out.
No, I'll give you that. Only a 1 year starter. He was a rotational guy the year prior with let's face it, a very deep Ohio State team. We used to see this a lot with the Alabama teams of Nick Saban's era. We've seen teams with Georgia players where guys have to wait their turn sometimes. And this is a guy who kind of had to wait his turn to be a starter. But man, the 1 year starter was completely off the charts athletic ability. And look, I get your point about the 1 year, but I've seen enough here of a guy that has a combination of speed, burst, power, long arms, almost never misses a tackle. I think he's shown the athleticism and the size. He can play all 3 linebacker positions, can rush on the edge, which is what we're talking about here. He did line up on the edge over 133 times at Ohio State, so he's shown that ability. Off the charts athleticism. That's what jumps out at me, Alex. The high motor, never takes a play off, incredible closing speed, and he's not just a rusher, he's an elite run defender, a guy that on tape has shown the ability to convert speed to power. Like I said, that closing speed is just incredible. It just jumps off the tape. The player comp for me is an absolute no-brainer. I see a guy that reminds me an awful lot of Micah Parsons, a guy who played linebacker, but also lined up as kind of a hybrid pass rusher. I think this guy is about as talented as of a player as I've evaluated in probably the last 2 drafts. I don't know what you don't see here, unless you just see him as a linebacker, which I understand some people think that he's more suited just to be a linebacker. I will say this, if he is a linebacker only, I think he's an all-pro linebacker. If he's a guy that you move onto the edge, I think he has all-pro potential on the edge as well. And in the modern NFL, where we see all these hybrid looks and guys need to be chess pieces more than ever, I think this is the ultimate chess piece. And my highest graded player in this entire draft, hands down.
Yeah, and that might be where we differ at. Like, I don't see all of those attributes. That's what I'll call them. I'll call them attributes. I don't see all of those attributes the way that you see them. And that more than likely is where we're having the difference in terms of what he is. But Either way, the first guy I have is David Bailey out of Texas Tech. I mean, right now, when you look at his tape, there's a lot of there's a specific move that he goes to in and out, and it's the spin move. But then I saw a few rushes where he was able to bull rush the tackle and a couple of other things where I think that this guy, as an outside linebacker now, let's be clear, as an outside linebacker, that he's going to be able to do so. He's going to be able to come into a 3-4, or maybe perhaps be able to put his hand in the dirt. I don't know, wherever he gets drafted, put his hand in the dirt and cause some problems immediately because of his unique speed to burst. Because there's the speed coming at the tackle, then there's the burst once he gets loose from the tackle that drives right into the quarterback or the running back. So that's why I have him at number 1.
I really like David Bailey. Absolutely. And I went on a rant about how much I like Arvell Reese because I think he's the most blue chip player in this class. David Bailey is another blue chip guy. And we talked about this a little bit the other night with the wide receiver class. This is a really good draft as far as depth, incredible depth, especially at edge and wide receiver, especially these two groups. Tons of good players, but not a whole lot of blue chip guys, A-plus prospects, so to speak, but a lot of really good players. David Bailey is one of the few A-plus prospects at the edge position in this class. Really, really good player. Lightning quick first step, natural pass rush instincts. You mentioned how he can, he has the spin move. I got in my notes multiple moves. You're right. He just has a multitude of different ways he can beat offensive tackles on the edge. Relentless motor, big time production, 14.5 sacks last year. Also led the country with a 20.2% pressure rate. So the guy is absolutely disruptive, has that flexibility to bend the edge, in a power and speed combo player. A guy, like you said, can win with power, can win with speed. I will not be surprised if he's the first player taken off the board after Mendoza. I would not be surprised at all because he's definitely one of the most complete players in this draft. So, Alex, So who do you have at number 2 then?
I have Akheem Mesidor at number 2 from Miami. Now, let's understand, Miami had a very good defense. There's Rueben Bain Jr. Let's just talk about the edge guys. There's Rueben Bain Jr. There's Akheem Mesidor. One of these guys may not be the guy when we see them get to the league. That's what I'll say first, because a lot of times, a lot of these guys are getting because of the guy in front or the guy in back in terms of the edge rusher, the guy in front or the guy that's playing maybe outside linebacker. They're getting to their play because of the guy that they're playing with and not necessarily because of them. You'll think about that when you think about people like Cleveland Farrell. When he had Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins next to him, he was the guy that was kind of out out of that group. He kind of didn't make it.
Let me ask you something real quick. Not to interrupt you, but let me ask you something because you got me thinking about this. So now, don't get me wrong. I love David Bailey almost as much as you do, but does that concern you at all with him, considering all the NFL talent he had next to him on that D line?
No, and the reason it doesn't is because of watching his individual play and what he was doing to the. I'm going to mix this up. Either the left or right tackle. I can't remember which one he was going at, but whichever one he was going at, taking him one-on-one, and it was an outside guy, watching how the speed to burst and the spin, again, just the spin move now. Like I said, he has a couple of moves. He'll have to get more when he gets to the next level, but his speed to burst showed me, I said, okay, well, no, that's not other people. That's him on his own doing those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, but you've got Mesidor ahead of Rueben Bain. And I think a lot of people, when they hear this, they're going to say, wait a second, Mesidor ahead of Bain, because Bain's kind of the bigger name here and higher on a lot of people's lists. But you think Mesidor is the better prospect.
Yeah, but Bain, and I'll just say this right now, Bain is number 4 on my list. But Bain is a smaller, he doesn't have the size that I would want for my guy. He's more, I think they have him listed around 6'3". I think he's more 6'2" for the most part, maybe 6'2", maybe 6'2" and a half, and about 265, I think, maybe 265, 270. So I think his size is what kind of dropped him down for me. Now, if he's 6'4" or something, he'd probably be my number 1 and he'd be my number 1 and my number 2, but it's because of his size that I have him drop down a little bit more. at number 4 than I do have Akheem Mesidor. But I still give him his credit when I say, again, we don't know. One of these guys might fall off because it was the other guy that they were getting the push from. I forgot the guy that Julius Peppers played next. I think Ryan Sims. Ryan Sims is another guy that got drafted in the first round by Kansas City and then flamed out because it was really Julius Peppers that made Ryan Sims look good. So this may be the case, but just for what I've seen, it's Akheem Mesidor at number 2 for me.
Right. Or like you said, you brought up the Sims comparison with Peppers. You brought up Cleveland Farrell being the outlier with some of the guys he played with. But then there's other teams like you look at Braden Fisk and Jared Verse playing as teammates, actually, ironically, as teammates in the pros as well. And both playing at a really high level and ended up being really good pro players as well. So, sometimes they're both that good. But I'm with you. It is sometimes hard when you're lined up next to other NFL level guys. How much pressure does that take off of a guy sometimes versus being the focal point that the offense has to focus on? Quick shout out to our friends at props.cash, the best player prop research tool in the game. Props.cash lets you scan thousands of props across sports books to quickly spot the highest value opportunities. You get real-time injury and lineup intel, advanced filters to find exactly what you're looking for, and even correlated player props so you can see what tends to hit when a player goes over their line. They cover NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, college basketball, and the WNBA. It's legit next level prep. If you're serious about betting smarter, go to props.cash and use code PGF25 for 25% off your first month. That's code PGF25 for 25% off your first month at props.cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. I'm going to get to my number 3 player here, Alex, and I'm curious who you have at 3. At number 3, I have Zion Young out of Missouri. Now, this is a guy that I think is climbing draft boards right now. And the more people started talking about him, the more I had to go back and watch more tape. And the further up my board he has climbed, this is a complete football player. A guy who is absolutely elite versus the run, but he is long, explosive as a pass rusher, consistently sets the edge on tape. His motor and effort are off the charts, strong hands. And if you want to talk about a guy who has an NFL prototype build for an edge defender, this guy was built in a lab. Swim move, rip move, spin move. He's got discipline, doesn't bite on fakes, doesn't bite on screens, a guy who crashes down the line of scrimmage, plays with an intensity, and shows up on big downs. Multiple times on tape, on big third downs, on big situations, he comes up with the big play, lines up with his hand in the dirt. He can also stand up on the edge, so I think he's scheme versatile as well, which is another thing I love about him. I am a big, big fan of Zion Young.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Zion Young. Zion Young is a person that I had put off to the side when we say, hey, who just missed the top 5? Zion Young is one of those guys because of everything that you just said. Now, this is a guy that's on the line, so he is playing a little bit different role than we're talking about with the other guys. But Zion Young, yes, I believe he's going to be everything. I think he could play in a 3-4 or he could play in a 4-3.
Absolutely. Alex, who do you got at your number 3? Number 3 edge defender.
Right. So at number 3, I have Keldrick Falk from Auburn. Now, here's a guy who has it's not electric speed, but it's speed. It's not electric burst, but it's burst. He has all of the antics of an edge rusher that you would want. I'm not saying he's going to get 15 sacks, but will he get 8 to 10 sacks? Yeah, I think he can get 8 to 10 sacks, probably more around 8 in this instance than 10, but he's a guy that's going to be a consistent guy, may not be a Hall of Famer, definitely not a David Bailey in terms of A+ status, but a guy that's going to be a consistent guy that's going to come in, that can be coached and do a lot of different things.
So I'm guessing with a guy like him, you're betting on the upside with Keldrick Falk, because the production, I worry about the lack of production. And I'll be honest, this is a guy who didn't make my top 5. I'm not that high on Keldrick Falk. Now, I know he's on a lot of people's top 5 lists, so you're definitely not alone. But I just see a guy who's very inconsistent down to down. He flashes at times, and he looks the part at times for sure. And the athleticism and some of those things show up on tape. I really don't like the inconsistency, and the lack of production is eye-opening for me. So he didn't make my top 5. My number 4 prospect here, I've got Cashius Howell out of Texas A&M. This was a guy that we talked about going into the season, Alex, when we did our Texas A&M preview. We were talking about this team as a dark horse out of the SEC. We're going to take a victory lap on that one, by the way. Explosive first step quickness, big time production, 11.5 sacks. Led the SEC in quarterback pressures with 41. I think he's one of the best pure pass rushers in this draft. Bend and dip around the corner, that flexibility that you look for on an edge rusher, has that inside spin counter move that can be devastating, gets his hands up, bats down passes at the line. He's also a guy with some versatility, because we saw him at Texas A&M line up on the inside and outside of the tackle. He shows the ability to win with power and speed, high motor, high energy guy, which, by the way, no one is making my top 5 if you're not a high motor guy. You're just not going to make the list, because I think it's so important. You have to have that motor, man, if you're going to make my top 5. True. And this is a guy who I think is a tone setter up front for Texas A&M.
Yeah, and now I have Cashius Howell makes my list, but he makes my list at number 5 because I put Rueben Bain above him. But I think you're right about Cashius Howell. He had, I guess you could say 5 years, but let's just say 4 years of starting material. But he started at the linebacker, and then he went to Texas A&M and started at defensive end. So at linebacker, he ended up with 9 sacks. At defensive end, he ended up with 11.5 sacks. So he can show you I can put my hand in the dirt, or I can play linebacker. With being only about 220, 230 for the most part, I think he'll end up being a linebacker. So I think he's going to excel at being a linebacker, but he has the ability to play both if he puts on a little bit. He looks more a little bit, I don't want to say looks more like, but he has some ability similar to Micah Parsons, where he could play linebacker and he could put his hand in the dirt, or I guess maybe TJ Watt for the most part, put his hand, play linebacker, put his hand in the dirt, putting on maybe about 10 to 15 more pounds and being able to put his hand in the dirt. And he can also get tackles for loss as well.
Yeah, really disruptive player. I mean, I am with you. I do think he needs to put on a little weight. There are times where he's not the best as far as being able to anchor versus some bigger guys. But like I said, pass rush is pretty elite from this guy, and there's a lot to like about him as a player. But so we basically had 4 and 5 flipped, because I have Rueben Bain at number 5. And this is the guy I said in the intro, guys, is going to shock some people, that I had him all the way down at 5. It's not that I don't like the player, but Alex, you alluded to it. I'm a little worried about the measurables here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about all the things I like about him here in a second, but I'm a little worried, and I think the combine is going to be really interesting, because this is a guy that the combine could really hurt his draft stock. Because right now there's a lot of mock drafts that think that this guy is a top 10 pick. And look, based on the tape, he probably should be. But if he's as small as some people think he is, which some people think he's going to come in and measure even smaller and slower than what we expect, and the concern with the short arms, some people think he could have unusually short arms for his size. I think those things are going to matter. And so those things definitely worry me. But if we're talking about the prospect on tape, which is the more important thing, this guy is a junkyard dog. I mean, an absolute dog. Powerful, really strong hands, high motor guy, chases plays down from behind, multiple pass rush moves. He has that nasty rip move that we saw in the college football playoffs, which, look, I think his stock really took off in the playoff because that's when we saw him going up against some of the elite teams in college football, and he was dominant. He's versatile alignment. He can play up and down the D-line, can play inside, outside. He converts that speed to power, plays with a nasty attitude and a toughness, and he's a guy that can set the edge. When we were talking about Cashius Howell, he has maybe a little trouble with setting the edge. Not a problem for Rueben Bain. He absolutely can do that.
Yeah, and you know what? I look at Rueben Bain, and when I was mentioning the size and why I kind of had him down, you look at Robert Mathis and you look at Dwight Freeney, guys that were smaller. I think Robert Mathis was 6'2", and I believe Dwight Freeney was about 6'1", maybe 6'1.5", maybe for the most part. But they were both dogs, at least in the pass game. They were both dogs in which they did in terms of, getting sacks and getting tackles for loss and things like that. And if he goes to a team where they're going to be scoring a lot of points and he's going to be able to pin his ears back and just chase the quarterback, I think he will be a better player than he'll be in a team where they're going to play, nunch if you crunch type of games where they're going to be winning 20-19, 20-17 games. I think if they're up and he can pin his ears back and go after the quarterback, he's going to be a better player. But again, a lot of these players, given how we rank them, nothing matters unless you look at where they go. Remember Leonard Floyd? Leonard Floyd was a nobody in Atlanta, and then he goes to the Rams. He becomes somebody. He ends up with 10 or more sacks or whatever. So it matters how you play, where you play, and what you do best.
All right, who just missed the cut, Alex?
TJ Parker was a guy that just missed for me. I liked what I saw from him, but Clemson, they kind of went on the down spiral a little bit. So we kind of forgot all about them. But
kind of is an understatement.
Yeah. TJ Parker, along with Zion Young, TJ Parker is a guy that just missed for me as well. He was probably coming in at about maybe 7.
Yeah. So we're definitely on the same page here. And this class is so deep. This is such a good edge class that it was really hard to whittle this down to 5 because TJ Parker absolutely just missed the cut for me as well. Elite edge setter, plays with tenacity, that long arm pass rush that we saw it on display at the Senior Bowl can absolutely destroy offensive tackles. He really had a good showing and kind of reminded us all of how good of a player he was and why he was on so many people's radars going into the year. And then to your point, Clemson just fell off the map and we kind of forgot about how good some of these guys are on this roster. Elite strength. He's a power rusher, controls the run game. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Kayvon Thibodeau. Power rusher, edge setter, really good against the run, but still can rush the passer. And then another guy who did make your top 5, just fell out of my top 5, was Akheem Mesidor.
Okay.
Super disruptive player, consistently makes plays in the backfield. I actually think he has the more consistent tape than his teammate Rueben Bain. I think just play in and play out, he's more consistent. There was a few times in the middle of the year where Bain would disappear. I didn't see Mesidor disappear at all. I mean, he was always on, high football IQ, can really diagnose and read plays quickly, great closing speed, and he was really productive. 10.5 sacks, 16 tackles for a loss. This is one thing I liked about Miami. They would move these guys around. Mesidor, Bain, these guys would go up and down the D line, and they really showed how versatile they are. So a guy I really like. I think for me, the only reason he slid down a little bit is he's going to be 25 as a rookie. So, you kind of wonder, has he already hit his ceiling as a player? Maybe. But, if you're looking for a plug and play starter, this is a guy that's probably that guy. A team that's maybe already in playoff / Super Bowl contention. This is the kind of guy maybe you plug in and he's an instant impact guy.
So let me ask you a question. Derek Moore out of Michigan.
Derek Moore is the guy we talked about a little bit briefly because, man, he had a big time showing at the Senior Bowl. I think he really opened some eyes. Productive player, had a really nice year. If I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, I think he had 10.5 sacks this year. Really, really good player. He's a guy that's probably in my top 7 or 8 range. If I was going to go through my top 10, obviously we just put together our top 5 here and then just missed the cut. He would probably be just outside of that. So really, really good player, really solid player. I don't think he has some of the elite traits that some of these guys at the top have, But a guy that I'm a fan of, and I think he's going to be a really nice pick. If this wasn't so deep of a class, he'd probably be higher up most years. But this class just has so many guys on the edge this year. All right, guys, drop your top 5 edge defenders in the comments for us. We want to hear who you've got. Who are we too high on? Who are we disrespecting on this top 5? I want to hear who you guys think. If you enjoyed this episode, guys, do us a favor. Smash that like button. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything that's coming up next. We've got more player rankings episodes on the way. We're only heating up when it comes to the NFL draft. Plus, once again, guys, my top 25 big board is dropping soon. It's going to be exclusively on the newsletter. It's completely free, so make sure you're subscribed. The link is in the show notes. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.